Normal to Fallen mode is pretty easy, right? But what if you could only use 3 of each tower? And to top it all off, I can't use the same towers nor maps as I did on the previous modes. Now starting with normal mode, I chose these towers for my loadout and let's get right into it. Attempt 1, I chose the Four Seasons map. With a somewhat random loadout, I chose to start off with Archer. Its piercing makes for a decent crowd control tower and surprisingly it was sweeping the early waves. I got another one up soon after, and after that I started concentrating on getting some golden soldiers up as well as some military bases, with no real strategy in mind. It's only normal mode after all, right? Wave 8 we finally got our first boss, and after an intense 5-second battle, it got clapped. Skipping to wave 16 though, we got our actual first challenge, the slow boss. I was not too worried though, as I had my trump card, Turret. It was doing a decent job dealing with it, but I placed another one to speed things up. Soon after on wave 19, I placed 3 demolitioners for the why not, since I was overconfident, for now anyway. Wave 20 we got a rush of slow bosses and a necromancer as well, which would have been fine, but I still had auto skip on, so wave 21 speedy boss was not exactly being stopped. I quickly sold 2 turrets to replace them at the back, and things were starting to not go so well. Wave 27 I finally turned auto skip off, but it was too late. The hordes of the waves just stacked up and I lost like brutally. Attempt 2, I was going all in. I chose Toyboard, one of the easiest maps, as well as replacing Demolitioner with Sledger, one of the best support towers. With the easier map, as well as more thought out tower placement this time, we cleared the early waves just fine. Skipping to the previously lost wave 27, we actually won, due to not skipping. Shocker! So I kind of forgot I had Sledger up until now, so I quickly got a max one down for some decent stopping power. Finally, wave 30 arrived, and with it, Gravedigger. As it was being chipped away, I kept replacing Sledgers, thinking it did some slowdown, but yeah, turns out it does nothing. After a fair bit of time, the Gravedigger finally got stopped, and the first mode was finally completed. Hey, you see that badge though? Yep, I just beat it for the first time. Can we get some W's in the comments, guys? Hardcore solo? Okay, so after beating normal mode, I had to choose between saving farm or cowboy for fallen mode, as I definitely need either to afford max level accelerators and engineers. So after doing some thinking and asking the best TDS players for advice, I got the best, most reliable way possible to choose. Cowboy it is. Going into Molten mode, I chose Wrecked Battlefield, one of the longest maps in the game. For my early game, I got multiple level 1 cowboys down. Though upgrading them might seem like the logical idea, keeping them at level 1 ensures maximum income until you start getting leaks. This went on until wave 12, where leaks started popping up, so I started upgrading them. I kinda forgot hiddens existed, so I got a few wardens at the back to clear them. Oh, and I also placed some elf bases too, sure for the hiddens, but I just like the tower, you know, it's cool. Wave 18's misters appeared, so I started getting some proper upgrades on my cowboys in response, which helped clear the waves. With smooth sailing, I placed some mortars on wave 22, and soon after, the slow boss appeared. I actually thought we were fine, but it came pretty far, so I placed some well-do minigunners to help finish it off. The rest of the waves were going fine, for the most part. But on wave 32 I got pretty bad luck on the mystery bosses, and a rush of speedy bosses managed to overwhelm me. On my second attempt though, I got maxed elf camps really early on wave 30 to 31 this time. The full map mobility and the elves being able to stack up is just not something you should underestimate. Wave 32 showed up again, but with well placed wardens they were dealt with quickly. Wave 36 meanwhile was when the mystery summoner would be spawning, but the gunner elves were really starting to stack up, so I was not really worried at all. It did not even manage to hit one of them before being clapped. Sadly, like 10 seconds later, they all got stomped on, but it's the small victories, you know? On wave 39, a horde of Molten Titans spawned, but with 3 maxed mortars, we made quick work of them. Finally, wave 40 arrived, and with it, Molten Boss. This time, my support tower Warden actually played a role, with it being able to slow it down by a small amount. I kept replacing them on the map, and after reaching halfway through, it got defeated pretty easily. Now sure, those were challenging, but now it was time for Fallen mode. Sure, I had a loadout of some of the best towers in the game, but with some even finding solo Fallen hard without even having any restrictions, this was not gonna be easy. For this attempt, I chose the U-turn map, since without DJ's range buff, the curves would be essential for winning here. I started off by getting a couple farms up, and then an engineer right after to stop leaks. Then on wave 6, I leveled my farms up and almost ended up placing a 4th farm, but thankfully I stopped myself in time though. The engineers were clearing the early waves with relative ease until the first boss wave. Wave 10, the first abnormal boss spawned, so I placed the 3rd engineer to bolster my defenses. It almost ended up leaking, but the sentry range came in clutch. Wave 13, the first hiddens appeared, so I got level 2 on all my engineers ASAP, leading to no leaks in the end. Wave 15 though, I had the issue of bosses as well as a horde of hidden, so I got a ranger up to at least deal with the bosses. The hiddens were still an issue though, but I had literally just enough to get an accelerator at the back to finish them off. Skipping to wave 19, I finally had 3 maxed farms, so I started buffing my defense with a pursuit. Wave 22, we got the first giant boss, but it got obliterated quite quickly. Overall, things were looking pretty good despite the previous close calls so far. Wave 30 meanwhile, an actual challenge popped up, the tank. With its high speed and health, it managed to get pretty deep into our backline before finally being stopped by the accelerator and rangers. Oh, and on wave 33, I realized engineer actually had better DPS than accelerator, since I did not have commander's buff, so I went all in on maxing my engineers all the way to wave 37. Speaking of wave 37, do you two know pure crowd control towers like Mortar? The necromancer bosses were not to be underestimated, especially with the warden. Thankfully the warden hit my engineers and not my accelerators, so I managed to scrape through on that one. Wave 39, a rush of fallen heroes spawned, but my towers made quick work of them, with them basically just being free money at this point. Now, wave 40 finally arrived, and all my towers were maxed, except for one accelerator. The warden stunned all my accelerators besides one, so errors managed to already get halfway, but we quickly recovered. Fallen Guardian spawned next, and of course right after, Fallen King. Now sure, the boss was the biggest problem, but the Fallen Guardians revealed my biggest issue, money. My towers were getting stunned left and right, and without enough money to replace them all, I had few options. I replaced an accelerator just for it to be stunned again right after, quite a rookie mistake. The Fallen Guardians were getting further and further, so I replaced some accelerators and retargeted the rangers, and by the smallest margin of error, we somehow survived with only 8 HP left. I don't know how. Now it was time for the actual boss fight. I started by replacing my out-of-range engineers at the back. My placements were not exactly great, but hey, this was stressful, okay? It was getting chipped away surprisingly fast, but after bringing it down to only 11,000 HP, I ended up losing. For a first attempt though, this was actually looking possible. So attempt 2, I forgot hidden bosses exist, so yeah. Now attempt 4, I somehow lost to the same wave again, don't ask me how. Now in attempt 7, I reached wave 40, but ended up losing to Fallen Guardians. Finally, attempt 8, I actually got a breakthrough by reaching Fallen King, but by the smallest margin of 1000 HP, I ended up losing. After that, I kept reaching Fallen King on each attempt, but kept losing over and over with it having over 30k HP each time. So after a bit of thinking, I finally understood why. See, Fallen King has a block move that makes it stand still, which gives me time to beat the Fallen Guardians and actually stand a chance. But it's pure RNG and only happens rarely, or I'm just really unlucky. So after removing the limit on only my farms and many more attempts, this happened. This is gonna be sped up, so feel free to skip. After 21 attempts, I finally beat it. 420 likes, and I'll see if I can make an even crazier challenge for the new mode coming next month. See you on the next one.